Hi, this is Jason, and welcome to our hands-on segment covering CloudFormation. In this hands-on segment, we are going to start by launching a very simple CloudFormation stack. And the stack is based on a template that is located in a public S3 bucket. It's a template file called s3bucket.yaml. And it's a very, very simple template. Let's take a quick look at it. The template specifies the AWS template format version, and then the only section it has is a resources section where we are defining a single resource called class bucket, and the resource type is an AWS S3 bucket resource, and there's just simply one property that's being defined, which is a tags property where we are defining a single key value tag. There's also a metadata attribute, and that allows us to make comments. The metadata attributes aren't visible. It's not something that's actually like deployed to AWS. It's simply some information that we can include in the template, just like adding comment statements to our application code. Okay, well, let's take a look at what we're going to do here. We are going to launch a new stack using this template, and then we're going to take a look at the newly created S3 bucket. And what I want you to see is that CloudFormation is going to automatically generate a name for the S3 bucket. You noted in the template definition code that I did not specify a name for that bucket. There's a logical name, but that's the logical ID of the resource that we can reference in CloudFormation. And CloudFormation will use that logical name to generate the actual name of the S3 bucket. Let's go into AWS. I've already logged into the CloudFormation dashboard, and you can see here it lists all the stacks that I have launched in this region, which is US East 1. And I already have a few existing stacks in the region. I'm going to create a new stack by clicking on the Create Stack button. And I'm going to create the stack with new resources. A couple years ago, AWS added the ability to import existing resources into CloudFormation's templates. These are resources that were likely created manually, and we want to integrate them with a CloudFormation template so that they are under management along with other infrastructure as code. We're obviously not going to do that here. We're going to create new resources with a new stack. When I create a stack, I will start by uploading and specifying a template file. The template file is currently in S3. I can also upload a template file from my local workstation. In the S3 URL, I'll just simply paste in that S3 bucket YAML file URL, click on next. It's asking me for a stack name, and the stack name that I'll use is, I'll just call it my stack. It's the stack name. There are no parameters specified in the template. If you recall, there is no parameters section in the template. We'll click on next. We could define some tags for the CloudFormation stack. There are some stack failure options that we can set. By default, CloudFormation will roll back any stack changes or any resources that it creates in a stack if it encounters some sort of failure while deploying the stack. And that's been the default behavior for a long time. A couple years ago, AWS added the option to preserve any of the successfully provisioned resources from the stack, meaning that a stack could sort of like deploy half of the resources, encounter a failure, and instead of rolling back all of the resources, it would preserve the resources that it was able to deploy successfully. And oftentimes people think that, wow, that sounds like actually a good idea, because then I could just go and fix the template, deploy it again, and it will finish deploying whatever resources had failed. But in general, I would say that that's an option you really should avoid. I consider it to actually be an anti-pattern, especially if it's used within a continuous delivery pipeline, because that option can essentially hide some failure modes with your infrastructure deployment. So in general, you should pretty much always leave it at the default option, which is to roll back any stack resources when it encounters a failure. We won't talk about any of the advanced options here in this course, so we'll click on Next. And now we can review. It's going to launch this template. There are no parameters. Everything looks good. So we'll click on the Create Stack button. And when we do that, we'll start to see events. You see this My Stack, and if I click on this refresh button on the right, there are a set of events. It says it's creating the stack, and it will begin creating the resources defined in the stack. Again, there's only one resource here called class bucket, so it's pretty small. Click on refresh, and this will create the resources pretty quickly. If I click on the stack info tab, you can see that it's already complete. So it says create complete under the status. If I click on resources, it shows any of the resources that were created by the stack, and here is my bucket. And look at the bucket name. The bucket name is called mystack-class bucket- and then a bunch of random alphanumeric characters. So when it creates the name of the bucket, what we call the physical ID of the bucket, it prefixed it with the stack name and then the logical resource ID, and then a set of random alphanumeric characters. And what this means is that, and why this is so beneficial, it like automatically generates this sort of random looking name, is that I could take this CloudFormation template and I could deploy 20 stacks in the same account and region using this template, and there would be no conflict with the S3 bucket names. You remember, every S3 bucket has to have a unique name. And so CloudFormation is basically guaranteeing that my bucket name will be unique, and that I can reuse this template multiple times without any sort of name collision occurring, which is really beneficial. I click on the Outputs tab, and there's no outputs defined in my template and no parameters either. If I click on the Template tab, then you can see here's the actual template file that I had uploaded. Well, this looks great. So we could, of course, begin using the S3 bucket right now if we wanted to. Let's make a simple change to our bucket, to our stack. And what we're going to do is we're going to add an output value called bucket URL, which is going to generate, which is going to provide the website URL associated with our bucket. What I'm going to do is I'm here in a code editor, and here is my template. I'll just go right into the template, and I'm going to add a new outputs section with an output called bucket URL, and that has a value of get at, and get at is an intrinsic function. It's getting an attribute, and it's going to get an attribute from the class bucket resource. And the attribute is specified using this dot notation. The actual attribute I want is called website URL. Now, how do I know that that's an actual attribute that's available? Well, I have to go to a CloudFormation documentation. If I do like a Google search on CloudFormation S3 bucket, then I'll get to this page here that gives me all the documentation for that AWS S3 bucket resource type. And if I scroll down, there's a lot it shows me all the different properties I can set. And if I keep scrolling here, it will show me any of the attributes that I can retrieve associated with the resource. So you see, here's my get attribute function, and it gives me a list of different attributes that I can pull. And here's the one I want, the website URL attribute. That's what I'm looking for. And so the documentation is incredibly helpful. I honestly, I don't have these things memorized. I don't have all the properties and attributes memorized. And so when I'm writing CloudFormation code, I'm constantly looking at this documentation. Okay, well, we're modifying this, and we'll also add a description, and we'll just say S3 bucket website address for the description. I'll save that file. And now we want to update our stack. And we can update our stack by clicking on the update button. And I want to replace the current template. I'm going to replace that with a file that I upload. So I'll say upload a template file. I'll choose my file. And the file I want is located here on my file system, s3bucket.yaml. I will open it. And by the way, when it opens your file like that, it kind of quickly validates the file. And if there are any YAML syntax errors in the file, then you'll get an error message or a warning message that'll pop up that'll let you know that there's a problem with the file. That doesn't necessarily mean that it can actually deploy a stack using that template. It just means that syntactically the syntax of the file is correct. Okay, I'll click on the next button. There are no parameters for this template, so I'll click next, scroll down to the bottom, accepting all the defaults, click on next again, and here, when we're doing an update, if I'm making changes to a cloud, a resource that's managed by CloudFormation, it would provide me with a list of the changes that are going to be made, which is really helpful, right? If I'm updating an existing stack of resources using CloudFormation, CloudFormation then can tell me which resources are going to be updated, what changes are going to be made. And sometimes changes require a replacement of a resource. And so that's really important to keep an eye on, because there might be times where you don't want to replace a resource, or that would have some sort of adverse impact on your service. And you want to pay attention to that. I'm not actually making any changes to the S3 resource in this case, because I'm just simply adding an output value. And so I'll click on the update stack button, and you can see now in the event log, it says update in progress, and this should happen very quickly. Yes, it's already done. Update complete. So we've updated the stack with an output value. Now, if I go to the outputs section, you can see that there's an output key called bucket URL, And here is the value for that. So here's the actual like web URL for my S3 bucket, which is very cool. Okay, well, the last thing I want to do is just show you how we can easily delete the stack. If I go to and click on the delete button and click on the delete stack button, what will happen is CloudFormation will delete any of the resources associated with my stack. It'll clean up everything that was created. And this will happen very quickly since there's only one resource in this stack. It says delete complete, which is what we want. If we go to the stacks listing, then you can see that my stack is also gone. So that stack has been deleted. Well, I hope that this hands-on video was helpful for you in understanding how to deploy a basic stack using CloudFormation. Stay tuned for another hands-on video where we'll do something more complicated and build more resources using CloudFormation.